SB 79. If you haven't heard about SB 79, it is a housing bill that is basically going to shove high density housing into your neighborhood, whether you like it or not. And that's what's going to happen here. Let's watch a video that will kind of detail YIMBYs versus NIMBYs, people how they feel about SB 79.
A big win for YIMBYs across California. You know, the yes in my backyard folks. One of the most controversial bills of the year just got the signature of Governor Newsom. Senate Bill 79 loosens and even overrides restrictions on housing developments near public transit hubs and other land owned by transit agencies. That includes buildings up to 9 stories tall right next to stations. The bill applies to 8 of the state's most densely populated counties. 4 of them are right here in the Bay Area, in places loaded with transit hubs for BART, Caltrain, and VTA. Advocates say this could put a major dent in the housing crisis, but as long as the project meets certain requirements, local officials and neighbors won't be able to stop it, and that's what has the opponents of this worried. Dahlin spoke with both sides today.
This new law will transform communities with large and busy transit hubs. Supporters say it'll help bring down housing costs. Opponents say it'll strip local control and threatens the character of their neighborhoods.
It's got the kind of quaint charm of an older city, a hometown vibe, and it's also got the kind of edginess of the city on the outskirts.
Xander Paisano moved to San Francisco's Glen Park neighborhood about 8 months ago, and in that time, he's fallen in love with it.
It's growing on me, especially this little area here, Glen Park. It's a special place in my heart now.
He worries the new law, Senate Bill 79, could change the neighborhood, especially if high-rise apartment buildings go up around the Glen Park BART station. But he also supports the bill's intention, making homes more affordable.
If it can lower the rent, that's always a good thing. But with that, there's pluses and negatives as well.
One of the main supporters, California YIMBY, spent 8 years pushing for this bill before the governor finally signed it into law.
It's a moment of validation. It's a moment of celebration. And really, it's a moment for the work to get started in actually implementing these laws.
The new law only applies to 8 California counties with the most transit hubs: San Diego, Orange, Los Angeles, Sacramento, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Alameda counties. Developers will be allowed to build up to 9 stories high next to subway stops. The closer the site, the taller the building. And the law overrides local zoning rules and neighborhood objections.
Angered, we're disappointed, we're frustrated.
Susan Kirsch, founder of Catalyst for Local Control, is one of many who oppose SB 79. Even Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass asked Governor Newsom to veto the bill, arguing it erodes local control, limits community input, and could hurt low-income neighborhoods.
The affordability part of it is a part of what is the big scam that many of us think, that these buildings are not, they have no assurances, no promises of meeting the needs for those people who are living on even minimum wages.
California YIMBY disagrees, saying it's simple economics. Increasing supply will eventually lower prices. State Senator Scott Wiener, the bill's author, says local housing policies in many cities have created the affordability crisis, and it's...
There it is. There's our favorite bill drafter, Scott Wiener. He's been pushing this for a while now, and he's very happy with his big buildings near transit. He's been pushing this for a while. So whenever it comes from Scott Wiener, it's usually not a good idea.
Time for the state to step in.
For a long time, we had essentially pure local control on housing. And so it was a race to a lot of...
The state has an obligation for human health and well-being to step in when you have local control that's run amok and really is actually hurting a lot of people.
Paisano says he understands both sides and feels caught in the middle. He still believes local residents should have a voice, but he's also fed up with sky-high housing costs.
Change is coming. Bob Dylan said it the best, right? Times they are changing. We have to be prepared for the change.
The new law takes effect next summer on July 1st, 2026, but some opponents say they're already considering a legal challenge.
Bay Area Council President and CEO Jim Wonderson praised the new measure, saying in part, quote, amid rising rents and already too high home prices, measures like these are critical to making housing more affordable, increasing ridership on transit, and giving people the option of living closer to where they work.
All right. SB 79. I'll just say it. Bad bill. Obviously, Scott Wiener is, once he's involved, it's usually a bad bill. The big thing I really kind of want to hammer home here is the fact that the state, in its infinite wisdom, has decided that you cities and you localities aren't building enough housing. So what we're going to do is, from the top down, we're going to create a state law that forces you to build high density housing. This is the bill text right here. And I highlighted some portions that I found alarming and concerning. So part of it says, integrate up zoning provisions into local jurisdictions' housing elements to align with statewide housing goals, meaning whatever the state wants, we're going to integrate it into your provisions, and promote compliance. Now, promote compliance to me sounds like we're going to force compliance. Promote is a very nice way to say, we're going to promote compliance with this law. When in reality, it's, nope, we're going to force this down your throats, whether you like it or not, with the regional housing need allocation process. It goes on to say, California faces a housing shortage with both acute and chronic, particularly in areas with access to robust public transit infrastructure. Building more homes near transit access reduces housing and transportation costs for California families and promotes environmental sustainability. Of course, that always has to get thrown in there as well. Economic growth and reduced traffic congestion. Finally, consult with local governments, regional planning agencies, transit operators, housing advocates, environmental groups, and other stakeholders to develop effective and equitable, that always sounds good as well, upzoning criteria. Sounds great. Consult with local governments. But the next subsection goes into require local jurisdictions to adopt and implement these transit-based upzoning policies in a timely and effective manner. To me, reading that bill, it sounds very much like we're going to shove as much high-density apartments down your throat, whether you like it or not. So in certain communities that may be residential, maybe they've had homes there that are close, maybe the train was built through those neighborhoods, whether it be Orange County or San Diego, and they're going to say, well, no, we're going to force you now. You got to start building apartment buildings next to those cute little craftsman houses that have been here since the 40s. And you can't say nay about it, because they've basically demonized local control. Your city council shouldn't have a say. And we've talked about this on the show before, how Sacramento hates local control. If we go back to the whole school board issue with Sonia Shaw and all that, they don't like school boards governing, so they had to come in and stamp that down. They didn't like the whole, the mandatory parental notification act that Sonia Shaw and them did. So they have to come in and stamp that down. So here they want to get housing, more housing built, apartments. That doesn't mean they're necessarily affordable. Apartments are not affordable here in San Diego. I don't know how they are in Orange County or LA. Anyone in the chat want to let me know how affordable apartments are in high density areas? So basically, the state said, screw your cities. We're going to destroy them and throw up a bunch of apartment buildings next to transit, whether you like it or not. That's my rant. What are your thoughts on SB 79?
Okay, so of course I agree with you. The first thing that stood out to me was removal of local control. And you and I are huge on that. Like you said, we talk about it all the time. We're very, local control is a big thing. Define public transit. Okay, I'm kidding because I know what public transit is, but is this just train stations, or does this apply to like major bus stops that are quite used? Like, is it just train stations? That's what I'm kind of confused about. And here's where I see this going if this doesn't get shot down. They're going to have to use eminent domain. Old homes to build there. Like, well, nope, we have the legal right to build this, so these apartment complexes. And I don't see how this is going to be affordable. I get that, okay, over time, there's more supply, therefore less demand, therefore the cost comes down. I understand basic economics, but you have to build these buildings. They've got all sorts of new codes that these buildings are going to have to be built, the standards too, which of course those are government passed things. And then they always go, oh, we're removing the red tape so that we can make it building faster. But then building supplies are grossly expensive right now. So yes, over time, but how many years over time is this supposed to lower the cost? So let's say it takes 15, 20 years. At that point, the building is outdated and needs upgrades. And then it's like starting all over. And I don't see this ever being actually affordable. It's like, oh, it's going to be expensive now, but in the long run, you're going to have to upgrade everything and new codes will be passed. So when you upgrade everything, you're going to have to do it to all these new codes and it's just going to be expensive again. That's how I feel about it. But also, they never, ever think more than, okay, here's the housing and yay, we get to get housing for, 800 people in this building. Okay, cool. But those 800 people, half of them are kids and that school is overloaded. The bus to get to the school, they're going to need more. So they're going to need more teachers. Oh, they need more classrooms. The streets, the freeways, this added, there's not the infrastructure to support all this. So now there's all this traffic. Okay, so more cars on the road, more buses on the road, more smog. And so now we need to pass more climate change regulations because we got to, throw money at the climate. Does no one think? Am I stupid? Are these stupid questions that I'm raising, or do they just really, are they stupid? Who's stupid here?
I always also think this whole affordable housing issue misses the mark of what I think people are upset about. It's expensive to live in California and buy a house. And I mean, the American dream is to buy and own a home. That's always been the American dream. Now, maybe that's changed over time. Maybe that's not what people want. But when I think of affordable housing, maybe my perception of it is different, is this idea of we want people to be able to buy homes because people buying homes is good for the economy. It's good for neighborhoods. It's good for raising kids. Kids are good for the economy. Families are good for the economy. That's what this is about. Building a bunch of studio 1 and 2 bedroom apartments close to public transit, to me, doesn't scream what we're talking about or what Californians are talking about when they say we want affordable housing. I want like someone in the chat said that a 1 bedroom is $2,400 in Huntington Beach. Seems like a lot of money. I mean, $2,400 is a lot of money for a 1 bedroom in Huntington Beach, especially if you're on your own working and you're trying to, you better have a pretty good job to afford $2,400. So I guess to me, maybe my perception when they say affordable housing, and I guess to them, they're fine with affordable housing being, the peasants all jammed together in these row housing and all these apartments crammed on top of each other while they all live in penthouses and, they have places in Marin County and they don't really care about that. So I don't know, maybe I'm being too optimistic and thinking to me, affordable housing is a home. It's a house. It's a home that you buy, that you afford, that you grow. It's equity. It's helps with the economy. It's something you pass down. It's property. It's the American dream. To them, I guess, screw that. Your American dream or your California dream is, don't you want a 1 bedroom right over a public transit area where, homeless people sleep and all sorts of crime happens at public transit stations and isn't that your California dream? You want to own that apartment and pay $2,500 a month? That's the California dream. The California dream is to live all jam-packed together like sardines. So, I don't know. Am I completely off base and thinking we're not seeing eye to eye with Sacramento on what affordable housing is? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's surely the opposite of how I live. I have 4 kids and a husband. We would not do in a even 2 or 3 bedroom apartment because then I would have a teenage son and a teenage daughter sharing a room, and that's not ideal either. But can I say something that I don't necessarily believe this, but if I were a conspiracy theorist, we've
Okay,
heard
let's
about these
put our
smart
tinfoil hats
cities.
on. Okay.
Okay, I'm not saying this is what they're doing. I'm really not. I just kind of like to think extreme doesn't mean it's my belief. We've heard about like there's smart cities. We hear about how they don't want us to have kids, which is weird. And then we hear about how possibly, you know, with another pandemic, they like want to lock us down and control us. Cramming a bunch of people into a building that then they could block off in a way is kind of a way to like have that control. And again, I really want to be clear that I'm not saying that this is what they're doing and I believe this. I'm just throwing this idea out there because it does seem like if you stick people in these situations, and we're not saying that all of them are going to be one bedroom apartments. Like, let's say it is 2 bedrooms and you're paying $2,500 a month and splitting it with a roommate or whatever, but you're then stuck in this cycle. You can't save for a house. Therefore, getting married, having kids isn't ideal because you're like, well, we don't have a yard. I don't have space. I can't have kids and have my roommate and, you know, pack 2 or 3 kids into my room with me and then have to go down 9 stories just to walk them to the local school bus where the school bus is going to be full anyway because no one thought of this beforehand. And now I have to send my kids to a private school because the public school is too full, but I can't afford the private school and I can't have the kids. And so I'm just going to sit and live in this. I don't know. Does it become government housing at that point? I don't even know how this works.
Well, I while we're on the topic, let's just go even farther. You know, we're not a conspiracy podcast, but I mean, these things exist out in the world. And I believe I saw at one point, I think it was, now I can't remember that big, who's the big creepy world organization? People in the chat, let me know. Now I can't remember. Klaus Schwab is the head of it. He was the head of it. And they put out, no, that's the World Health Organization. Oh gosh, someone's going to say it in the chat. Someone in the chat, like Klaus Schwab was the head of it. Anyway. But they're basically like a globalist society that believes in like 15-minute cities, and they've been pushing these 15-minute cities for a long time. So this isn't like outrageous to think what you're saying, that they've wanted people living in cities. Thank you, World Economic Forum. Someone told me in the chat. That's why we love doing this live, is because people can help us out. So the World Economic Forum is basically, thank you, Pauly Shortcuts, is in favor of 15-minute cities. And I totally get it, because if everybody lives in a city, it's much easier to control a population because they're all jam-packed together. You know, if we want to turn off your power and your Wi-Fi so you can't communicate, it's much easier to do that in a city, and much easier to do that to a mass amount of people in the city than it is when someone buys a home. And also there is this sort of philosophical thought behind, if you rent as opposed to buy, people have more incentive when they own property. It's that individualism, it's liberty, it's freedom. I own this property, I'm going to protect this property. If you rent, it just becomes this whole idea of like, it's more control. And I've always said that I think California is on its way to just creating a modern, feudalism, which I think we're at that point already in California. We've created a modern feudalism. There are the haves and the really have-nots. Basically, there's the wealthy and the people who can't afford to live here. And those are the people that they have a better time controlling and kind of duping into voting for more statism. But on that topic of local control, I had to look. I have some notes about this. Basically, really quickly, just to give you an idea, projects, yes or no, height and density, does the locality have a say? No, they cannot restrict below what SB 79 says, so they can't make it smaller, so they have to go with what SB 79 says automatically, so they can't dispute that. Site approval, the locality has partial say, but basically it's up to the state. They get to figure that out where it's built. Any sort of blockage, local say, nope. Proactive planning helps, but the state enforces, and the state gets to override non-compliance. So to me, that sounds like the locality has quite literally no control. You can control if you comply with SB 79 or want to go above that. So like if you want to build those 9-story or more apartment buildings, great. The state loves it. Build a 10, 15-story apartment building. They love that. Locality gets to say that. But anything less than that, if they don't want it, sorry, state gets to override. That does not sound like any sort of local control on my part or in my mind.
Right.
What do you think?
No.
Are you still here?
Yeah, I think it must be the weather.
I think it's the weather too. We'll just blame all this on the
definitely-
weather. It's all the weather's fault.
You know, we talk a lot about the state wants control. We talk a lot about, well, we haven't really gone super into the 15-minute cities, but these things, a 15-minute city doesn't happen overnight. I'm truly not a conspiracy theorist. I'm really not. I like facts. I like truth. But a 15-minute city, they're not just going to be like, hey, we're taking you know, this farmland and building a 15-minute city. They pass bills like this slowly but surely. They chip away at it so that you're kind of like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't that big of a deal. It's just a few counties are affected, you know. But then it's like they pass that, and then they pass the next one and the next one, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, when did we allow this to happen? We elected people who want weird control and who don't like land, or apparently, and think that. Which California, that's another thing. California is so beautiful. It is so beautiful here. And like, eventually they're going to be like, well, we need more housing. So Yosemite's going to have to go. We're building a house here. You know, it's just.
It's sad. And there's plenty of places to build actual houses in California. But moral of the story, SB 79 is a horrible bill that is going to force a lot of high-density apartment buildings in public transit areas in your city, if you live in any of these counties, Orange, Los Angeles, San Diego, or any of the Bay Area. So if you live in any of those counties, get ready to see a bunch of apartment buildings going up, because the state is going to force as much housing and apartments and, you know, $2,500 one-bedroom apartments next to public transit as they possibly can. Thank you, Scott Wiener, for that. Maybe you'll get struck down in court because it overrides localities. Who knows? Maybe we can pray for that.
But for real, are these considered government housing? Like, I'm confused about that part. There wouldn't be privately owned apartments, right?
No, so the developers are basically like, it overrides a lot of the local control and like gets around a lot of the environmental impacts and CEQA and all that stuff. So that developers can go in and build. So basically, if a developer comes in and says, I want to build a 10-story apartment building at this public transit, even though it's surrounded by cute little craftsman houses, basically the state's going to rubber stamp it and be like, great, thank you very much. And the locality is going to go, wait, that's going to be an eyesore and that's horrible for the neighborhood. And they go, too bad. You know, it's not government housing. They're not building it, but basically they're rubber stamping every project. The state's rubber stamping every project. The localities have no control over any of these developers.
This is not going to be affordable then. Like, Orange County will be, okay, we can move on.